This workout is for total time, and it is row calories, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10. The females will do 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 32, 24, 16, and 8. And the caveat here is there is exactly a 1-to-1 rest between each of your sets, again, for total time. This is in week 1 of our open prep cycle, and it is extra credit work. It's endurance-based work on the row erg to make sure that we're getting practice with row calories so that we know different time domains and efforts. For the shorter sets, the 10, the 20, the 8, the 16 for the females, we want you to go as fast as possible and try to recover in between those 1-to-1 rests. For the longer time domains, the 40, the 50, back to the 40, 32, 40, back to 32 for the females, try to have our max sustainable pace. And by knowing those now, we'll be better off in pacing for open and quarterfinal workouts. Let's go watch this workout.
And we have the person that demoed this workout on the mic today. Hello,
Hi.
Becky.
Hi.
So Becky is doing our week 1 test, which will also be a retest. So for those that are doing the endurance portion of our elite training path, that includes anybody that in RX or intermediate masters that want to do these progressions, you will retest this same workout at the end of the training cycle. I think that's important just to keep in mind that you want to have that score so that we can retest it again. And we're getting ready.
Oh, you got to
set. Yeah,
I got to know what I'm doing, guys.
Do you have your heart rate strap on?
No, the watch does the heart rate. It's not like completely accurate,
Yeah.
But I always like to look back and see what I did.
You can pull the data and look at it later on. Cool. We'll get into what Becky's been doing for training and some different rowing progressions that you've done, some ski erg progressions. But again, the reason that we introduced this workout during the open prep cycle is because we want people to kind of get a feel for calorie pacing in different environments. And what I mean by that is like for Becky here, she's doing 8 cals on her first set. The way that you may sprint that is going to feel different than, let's say, 40 cals on the middle set. And so we want people to know, like, what's my max sustainable pace? What's my sprint pace? How do I handle 1-to-1 work to rest? What am I going to do in a 5-round workout versus a 20-minute AMRAP? And so by doing the calories that way, you kind of get a feel for how you'll pace in the open or the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
Cool. So that first round, you held 1371. That was kind of like
Yeah.
And what was your goal when you started the workout? Like, did you have a cal per hour pace that you wanted for each of the sets?
Yeah, no, I think I wanted to try to hold that as much as I could. As I've rowed more, I've kind of just bumped up my, like, I guess you would call it max sustainable pace almost. Right. That's kind of how I think of this kind of thing. It's not like trying to go faster for this amount of calories versus this amount of calories. It's like, what could I hold for this entire workout and like just try to push it as fast as I can. And as I've gotten better at rowing, that benchmark was, 1,000 and then 1,100 and 1,200, and this one my goal was to try to stay above 1,300 for the whole thing if I could.
Yeah. So let's say 1,350 to 1,370. If I had to guess, it's probably somewhere in like the 142 to 143 per 500 meter range. And so for those that don't know calories per hour but do know meters, then that's kind of where Becky is on these intervals, at least on the way up, which you can see that she's hitting that. Wow, she got over 1,400 there. She's hitting the same pace on the 8 cals and the 16 cals, which I think is important. Like, you want to be able to have that pace where you can, and obviously we're speeding it back up to the 24, but you can hold that pace all the way through the longer duration 32 and 40 cal segments of this workout.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it before. I was trying to think of my strategy, and those little calorie numbers, the 8 and even the 16 a little bit, trying to sprint that is not super helpful from a time-saving perspective versus a how much effort perspective. So that's kind of how I think of it is I could hold this. I could probably go faster if I wanted to, maybe save a second, but the way that I'm going to feel afterwards is probably not worth it.
Yeah, so if you're looking at performance and how fast I can get this done, Becky's basically saying, hey, look, I need to have more quote-unquote go in the 32 and the 40 rounds. So for males, that'd be 40 and 50 rounds, as opposed to just going all out on the 8 or the 10 rounds, male-female respectively.
Yeah.
So this is the round of 24 cals, and she's still keeping the same exact pace, which again I think that's just a good sign of someone that knows their pacing and is a really good rower, which is the kind of the next step. Becky's been doing a lot of training on the ergs, both the C2 row and the ski erg. So when you're thinking about setting up on the row and then just kind of the technique, what are the key points of performance that you would tell your athletes?
Yeah, I mean, on these kind of workouts, rowing for calories, I don't do as much, but I know what it would feel like, if that makes sense. So that's how I picked this number. But I always try to get up to speed within like 3 to 4 pulls, like no matter what. I think for guys, probably 3 is completely doable, but for girls, 4 is probably more realistic. So that was it. Always get up to speed when you can. And then from a technique standpoint, I think the biggest thing that I do that I don't see a lot of CrossFit athletes do is I try to really keep my foot connected with that foot pad. I put the straps in really tight, but even if I didn't have the straps tight, my toes would not be like arching off of the foot pad, because I mean, when you think about it, you want as much connection as possible so that you can drive through your whole foot. I think that's one of the biggest things. And then also from a pulling standpoint, that part of the catch, right? So I return and then the catch, you want that change of direction to be really quick, because you can kind of trick the rower into thinking you're going faster than you actually are.
Yeah, and you're doing a really good job of keeping good tension all the way through your body. So you talked about your feet, but also even in the chain. A lot of people have a ton of slack, or like what I do is I'll pull aggressively with my arms too soon. Yeah. So you can see like Becky's extending her legs, then back, then arms. I'll pull right away, almost like an early arm bend and a clean, just because I feel more powerful in my arms. But feel and real are different. Like it may feel more powerful, but I'm actually leaking a lot of power doing it that way.
You don't want the chain to wobble. You want it to stay vertical. And also a lot of people, once they get past their knees, they'll kind of let the chain and their arms sink down to their shins, and then they're kind of making this looping motion. You don't want to do that either.
It's just a bunch of wasted motion.
Yeah.
It would be like doing a butterfly pull up and like exaggerating it to your belly button or something. There's no point in doing that.
Straight lines and like use your lats a lot too. And one thing that I have noticed more is it's a lot of core work too. Like if you can keep your core tight, then your torso angle kind of follows. Yeah.
And when you're thinking about your core, making sure you're learning how to breathe while braced. That's such an important skill to have in the sport in general. And most people don't know how to do that. So when they actually have to brace, they're holding their breath, which is safe if you're doing like a 1RM. But if it's a heavy workout with rowing and, 225 pound squat cleans or 275 and 185 pound squat cleans, you need to learn how to breathe while still braced.
Yeah. This one. So this is the 40 calorie. That midpoint, and based on how the 32 felt before that, I made the decision that I wasn't going to stay above 1300 the whole time. So I think I did 10 calories above 13, and then I wanted to do 20 kind of in this range. I didn't want to like completely fall off and die, but I still wanted to have some push at the end. And for me, that like just that 50 calorie or 100 calorie difference is enough that I can kind of like get my legs back under me. So then I get to around here, and then I think I try to kind of sprint the finish just to see what it's going to feel like to get back above 1300, because again, I wanted to do that for the rest of the way down.
Right. I'm a huge fan of fluctuating pacing. Now you can't have a huge drop off. Let's say like Becky went from 1350 to 800 and said that's my fluctuation. But if you went from 1350 and then you could drop down to 1250 and recover a little bit and then kick again, just a good way to optimize performance in a workout. Obviously, it would be ideal if like you could just hold a faster pace, but that's what training is for, right? We'll train this and make sure that you continue to improve so that on your retest, you're able to hold a higher pace.
Yeah. And this also, I don't know if anybody ever pays attention to strokes per minute, but this is not really where I'm most comfortable, is above like 30 or so. And what I spend a lot of time working on, I think what really helped me get better at rowing was working at lower strokes per minute and just learning how to really push with your legs. And then that translates into higher strokes per minute. But I feel like some people might end up doing this at like a 40 or something like that. And just think about how fast you're moving and how out of breath you get versus if you can do this 10 strokes per minute less, you can breathe better. And then you're using like muscle power instead of just how fast your body's moving. Yeah.
And on the longer ones, that's 10 less strokes, less actual like efforts that you're doing in a minute, which actually does play a role. But it is hard if you're someone like I talked about earlier, how I pull with my arms. It's hard to create enough power to slow your stroke rate down. So first, I think you have to have good technique, like know how to drive your legs into your back, into your arms, then worry about the stroke rate, because if you just are pulling really slow and only with your arms, you'll have no power.
Yeah. So this was another one. So 32, this is 32 on the way down. And I made the decision again that I was going to go hard for a little bit and then kind of the middle ground, just try to stay above 1250 or so, not go over 1300. And then I figured the rest is not cake, but I'd be able to stay above it for the way down.
I think psychologically it's easier once you get through this round. Like this is probably the hardest for most people. And then the rest of the rounds, okay, I can kick and I know I'm going to be tired, but the calories are just a little bit less. So I can kind of push myself.
Yeah. And I was looking at the clock. I was like, okay, that took a minute and a half. I can go hard for less than a minute and a half for these next ones.
Yeah. I know that I'm stating the obvious here, but obviously we're cutting out the rest times. Make sure when you do this test that you're resting exactly 1-to-1. So in other words, if it takes Becky 1 minute and 2 seconds to do a set, she's going to rest exactly 1 minute and 2 seconds. This may mean that you need someone there to help you with the times.
CTP was behind me counting down my rest times for me.
But that's the only way to get an accurate number on this workout. And even if you can't get it perfect, it's more about training, but we do want accurate scores so that we can retest this later on.
Yeah, and then I think this is the 24.
24, yeah.
And this one's probably like mentally tough, right? Like you can hold your hard pace. You know, only have 10 now and 9. So this is kind of like just hold on. That's what I was trying to do. Anytime I would drop down, I was like, no, get back up, because then you have 16, which is not a long time, and then you have 8, which is just kind of like go for it. Yeah.
And you can see that you're doing a good job. Your stroke's staying long. You're close to the 1,300 mark.
Yeah.
This one is still definitely hard. I mean, metabolically, you're probably in the fire right now. But again, psychologically, I think most people can push through that. And I think about these styles of workouts too, of like, what would I hold if it was 19.1 or another long workout? Like maybe it's not my 10 cal pace, but it may be my 40 or 50 cal pace, and then kind of think about it that way so that I'm always improving on any style of workout that comes out.
Yeah, and I was like, all right, let's just go. Let's see what you can hold, because you only have a little bit and you have a longer rest after this compared.
Yeah.
But if you could see me resting, like we cut out the rest. My rest is my mouth is open and I'm like gulping for air. Yeah, this is the point where you're breathing hard and you just kind of have to go, even if you don't want to.
Oh, yeah. All right, 3 cals left. So you were over 1,400 for most of that, now in the high 1,300s, which again is low 140s on a pace, which is really aggressive. All right, one more round. This should be a sprint round.
This was, yeah.
I think especially for those that are super powerful, take advantage of the 16 and the 8, or for the males 20 and 10 on the way down. You can make up some time. To Becky's point, not a lot of time, but still worth on the way down sprinting as hard as you can.
Yeah, I think it's just, leave it out there. Everything you got at the end.
Over 1,500 to finish. And a really good kick there. Booyah.
That was
awesome.